That is.
Those things working out with your son down there. I guess they're going through boot camp right now, right?
No, he's at his second NCT training.
It's called what?
Or BoS. It's his job training.
And what does that consist of?
They're teaching him how to be an airframe mechanic on a CH-53 helicopter.
Cool.
So this is his second level. He just finished the first level 2 weeks ago. Now he's starting the second level today.
A job skill like that, you'll also be able to translate that into a civilian job when you're ready.
Hopefully.
Yeah, that's the thing. A lot of times when folks go into the military, they get themselves, for whatever reason, into positions where they really can't translate their experience in the military, in civilian life, and that becomes problematic. That certainly would, they're dying to find aircraft.
Wow, this place looks huge.
What do you
like it so far?
Yeah, well, that's good stuff, man. That'd be a lot of fun. So how long is that last for?
2 more months. He should be done in July. I hope he gets leave. He hasn't had leave since he left his camp. But we went down to Pensacola, which is there once. Everyone tried to go down. He's in North Carolina now. He's trying to go down there.
So where's he going to be stationed? What's he
No,
They could send him anywhere.
they have those helicopters listed every job, so he could be anywhere around the States. He could be in Okinawa.
He could be anywhere in the world, right? Well, maybe not Afghanistan. I think it was pretty much out
He
of
could
there.
be on a ship too.
Really, on a ship too?
Yeah, and carriers have them, and amphibious assault ships have them. So, yeah, he could be on a ship too.
Now, is it, which helicopter is it?
CH-53 Super Stallion. Heavy helicopter.
Okay, that's not the Chinook?
No, it's a Square.
Yeah, I worked down in Boeing for several years, several times, several different, jobs down there. Working around, I didn't work on the Chinooks, but I worked around, the infrastructure to build the Chinooks, as well as the B-22, the
Osprey.
Yeah, they're pretty amazing machines. And that's also where they would take off in the backside by the riverside. They take down the Ospreys off and test them.
Definitely be moving in.
Gotta be in the action.
Oh, that's cool.
Feels lonely.
Sorry?
Feels lonely. He's right there in the action.
Yeah, it's like he's in trouble. The teacher.
That's where I'm sitting.
Oh, sure. I don't even know where this is right now. Oh, I'm trying to log on right now.
Yeah, put it on social media, website, everything.
I'll keep you company.
Thanks. How are you tonight? Oh, fantastic. Nice. Last couple days have been nice.
More people sitting up here than that's great. In the audience.
Oh, bad day for me.
Nobody goes to the planning commission?
What's that?
They're like the attendance for planning commission as well?
Usually it's only the applicants, or anybody ever comes to.
Really?
Unless there's some issue or something.
Yeah, I mean, if there's an issue, then
Yeah.
But normally, if you get 1 or 2 people, that's a lot.
Yeah, it's supposed to be nice. Maybe Thursday, Wednesday, maybe the.
Like the historical, like that?
Yeah.
Well, it's 6 o'clock.
Straight up.
Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the West Goshen Township Board of Supervisors meeting of Tuesday, June the 1st, 2021. To start the meeting, would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic myself to start. This meeting may be audio or video recorded by third parties, and it is being recorded for our YouTube channel stream. And on May the 20th, the Board of Supervisors met in an executive session to discuss personnel matters. Our first agenda item tonight is continued discussion of the Quality Inn, 943 South High Street, Westchester. So, Casey, last time we left this at the previous board meeting, I believe the developer who is in either contract or discussions with the property owner indicated he would like to have a conversation with staff around potential options of the property, and if so, what zoning implications it would be on that. Has there been any conversations since last time?
Yeah, Rick, Craig, myself, Kristen Camp, and Bill Webb, and Bill's on vacation this week, attended a virtual meeting with Mark Jonas, the property owner's attorney, Sam Tarantini, Ben Goldthorpe, and the property owner. A virtual meeting, and I think we had a very cordial discussion. Rick, you can as well chime in. I thought we had a cordial discussion with all attendees. Mr. Tarantini and Mr. Goldthorpe have an agreement of sale with the owner for the property. We don't know any more details, no amounts, it's none of our business. They've had that agreement of sale for at least a few months. So they're in their due diligence period to buy the property. As staff, we offered several alternatives to 250 lifestyle apartments, which our main concern, of course, is traffic, including mixed-use adult living, which will produce very little traffic. And there's, I believe, it's C3, the zoning, which allows for medical use, laboratories, that kind of thing, which would also be hopefully a low-volume traffic creator. Mr. Tarantini and Mr. Goldthorpe took all our conversation, and I was hoping we could have gotten it today, but they haven't responded yet, to give some more ideas about proposed uses that may be outside of the C3 existing zoning. So hopefully we'll have that in the next few days, and we'll probably bring this back to you again on the 15th. But personally, I thought it was a very cordial discussion. They're looking forward to working with the township, and I think, from my perspective, the kind of adversarial business has kind of gone away. It appeared that the owner really wants to sell. And again, that property, you know, the hotel use, motel use is not, it's pre-existing zoning, grandfathered. So it's not even zoned for that use currently. So we did provide them with a number of hopefully good, usable zoning ideas, relatively low volume traffic. So we'll hopefully get something back from the developer soon with some prospective ideas, and we'll bring that back to the board as soon as we have that.
Thanks, Casey. Did you ask if the agreement of sale was conditional upon a zoning change?
I don't believe that was asked. That was not stated by the developers. However, they know that it's not zoned for apartments. So we've not seen the agreement of sale. We don't have any access to that, so I don't know.
Does the board have any questions?
I just want to follow up on that question. He has an agreement of sale to purchase this property for what? What's he have in mind?
Yeah, his initial request was for 250 lifestyle apartments.
He knows that's a no-brainer.
It's not zoned for it. He knows that. Yeah, the developers know that. So I think they're now obviously coming back to have the discussion about what would the board now accept, as since apartments are not, you know, it's too much of a traffic generator. Rick said as many times that traffic is would be way too intense there for that location. So I don't know what their agreement of sale said, if it was, you know, a sale price based on prospective apartments, or they definitely said they don't want to run a hotel or motel. That's out of the question, because it does if the location's poor, the site is poor, the hotel is aged, it was built in the early to mid-60s. We gave them some valid uses that I think the board would agree with. Low traffic, so they're looking back with a reasonable request for a zoning change, possibly.
So is it likely that they're going to shorten the amount of space that is going to be basically on that huge pad? You're talking about 250 potential apartments, correct? So what is that going to look like in general? I mean, this could be like just a supposition.
Depends on the use, strictly on the use. If they get a tenant, like a hospital use, not it would be a hospital, but a medical use, that could be, something like Fernville Medical Campus, or some of our medical over on Montgomery. Or it could be, we did recommend an assisted living facility. Those are extremely low volume facilities for traffic. So they were going to digest everything we talked about and come back with, maybe that or similar ideas. They did discuss, which we kind of didn't agree with in person, was like a mixed use retail and apartments above, because you're still talking 150 apartments above, still too much traffic. So that was kind of knocked down immediately in the conversation.
So they have an agreement of sale. And so is there a time frame that's attached to when the Quality Inn would close?
We don't have access to it, so I don't know.
Yep.
Again, 6
Yeah, I mean,
months usually, or what's an agreement of sale?
Usually, all of it would be like in stages,
Mhm.
stages. I mean, I'm sure there's language in our agreement, and I don't know this, but typically there's some kind of language in the agreement that says, so there's whatever zoning approvals we need in a certain time frame. But I mean, I've seen 6 months, I've seen people be willing to wait 2 years to get all the necessary approvals they need. So, I mean, the medical uses that you mentioned, those would be by right uses. But the other uses, such as assisted living, or those are all, they have to take some kind of amendment to your zoning ordinance to be allowed to do that.
Well, thank you for meeting with them.
Yeah, I honestly, I think it was, we had attorneys, in the call. It could have gotten contentious, but it was actually rather a benign meeting, so.
Yeah, I got a question for Rick or Casey. So if they did come out with a different proposed use, what's the process by which PennDOT would evaluate whether a traffic light is warranted at Stanton Drive or Stanton Road? So I'm just concerned about, because I'm skeptical of these traffic studies because they don't take into account the rapidly changing situations, whether it's Amazon drivers on residential roads, whatever else. I just think they're not up to speed on the kind of traffic development creates. So what would the process be if there was a change in zoning, whether that would be something that would trigger a PennDOT review, or is that entirely at their discretion?
It would not trigger a PennDOT review. A PennDOT review could be triggered by the land development process when we evaluate the traffic impact study. But we've already spoken to PennDOT at some length about this location and what their future plans are, or what potential change or upgrades could be made to the area. And one of them does involve traffic signal, but it also involves extensive road work, which is not going to be feasible for any developer of any possible project to go in there to do. I mean, you're talking multi-million-dollar road changes. And right now, the way it sits now, you cannot put a traffic signal in there. It just won't work with the existing configuration of 202 and the ramp structure off of High Street. So the roadway changes would be required to get a traffic signal in there, and it's just way beyond the scope of anything we could ask a developer to do. So whatever goes in there needs to really work within the existing traffic framework, which is pretty poor. We did, in my opinion at least, the assisted living would be the best alternative there. There seems to be demand for that currently. That would fit on the site. Might look like an apartment building, but it would generate very little traffic, and it's still a residential use. That would require rezoning to R3, but the entire area around the hotel is currently residential use, so that would fit in nicely, would not constitute spot zoning. So that could be a very good fit if they have somebody that wants to put assisted living in there. Other than that, most of the uses by right in the C3 are high traffic generators, which is going to be a problem. And apparently, single-family homes, whether they be detached or attached, are not going to generate the revenue that these folks are looking for. At least that's what we were led to believe from the meeting. But I would agree with Casey. I think it was a much more amiable meeting with them than it was with the owner. We got basically nowhere with meeting we had with the owner. And the folks who were looking to purchase this were much more open to looking at alternatives and coming up with some way to make the site work that would not be particularly detrimental to the traffic situation down there.
Yeah, across the street there, I guess it's in East Bradford, there was a residential development put in, single-family homes. But I guess since it's already zoned for use that has a higher economic value, that isn't going to match the price that the property owner wants for the property.
Yeah, it's the woods of West Town or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably 15-acre site, a little bit bigger, I
About
think.
20 homes maybe. on
Yeah,
it.
yeah, and it's just down the street. It's kind of down as you go. It's kind of down by Pleasant Grove Road.
Yeah.
I think it's right there.
Yeah, pretty bad.
Where the church, that one. So, yeah. Yeah, they, in all honesty, they did not have any appetite for, like Rick said, detached or attached homes. Because I'm not sure it's enough revenue generator for them, for what they would have to spend for the property.
Did they mention the assisted living? Did they mention?
No,
assisted
well, it kind of
living?
came up organically. I think we
brought it up.
We brought it up just
Yeah.
as because it's, again, we're trying to keep the low traffic volume kind of perspective. And I think Rick or Bill brought it up, and they seem to at least nibble a little bit on it. So.
Okay, so any other questions from the board? Otherwise, we'll wait to hear their response and bring it back to a future meeting. Good. Okay, thanks, Casey and Rick. Good. Okay, the next agenda item was continued discussion of sound and quality of life issues at the Energy Transfer Boot Road Pump Station. So there's a couple of things. One is there was, I believe, an incident last night, Casey, that we can address first, and then having discussed that and what is happening, we can then deal with what was the regular agenda item, which was the discussion we previously had about the noise situation. So you want to inform the board as to what you know about the incident last night?
Yeah, I actually received late today. I've been waiting all day for an official Energy Transfer press release about it. Joe and Sarah from Energy Transfer called me later today, 3 o'clock or so, and gave me an update as to what happened. In his words, a vapor detector inside the actual pump station building itself detected vapor. He told me it was propane. It was not the mixed natural gas liquids that we expect to flow. This is only for Mariner 1. Mariner 2 and 2X are not in service yet, and they do not, according to Joe Massaro, go through the pump station. This is only Mariner 1.
It's the workaround. The 12-inch pipe is where they had the problems.
Right, no, exactly. That's exactly what Joe
Not the
Massaro said.
8-inch, it was the 12-inch.
12-inch,
So it's the workaround.
Right, precisely. Their vapor detection equipment actually worked correctly, detected the vapor. A seal on a pump failed. That seal has been sent to some laboratory for testing because it's relatively new, shouldn't have failed this quickly. The Public Utility Commission was on scene when they removed that seal today. Their investigators were there, and they were part of the investigation process to follow the lab and see exactly what happened. That seal was being replaced today. I don't have an update. This was at 3 o'clock. I'm not sure if it's done yet. Everything was taken out of service instantly. As soon as the vapor detector detected any vapor inside the room, all the valves were shut, and then all their emergency response procedures, according to Energy Transfer, took place. Emergency response was called, police, fire, hazmat was called into the county, and I have a statement that Chester County Department of Emergency Services has been issuing. If I can read that, it gives more technical, and their response on the county side, so if I can read that as well. And again, this is from Mike Murphy, Director of Emergency Services at the county. And this is what he's been sending out. This is not private between us or me. His statement reads, on Monday evening, May 31st, 2021, at 10:19 p.m., Energy Transfer Control Room called 911, stating that they were receiving a vapor detector alarm at the Boot Road pumping station 1261 Boot Road, West Goshen Township. Energy Transfer stated that the alarm they received indicated a small release of hydrocarbons inside the pump station facility with no hydrocarbons detected on the outside of the pump station building. Energy Transfer requested to 911 that emergency responders be dispatched out of an abundance of caution. Goshen Fire Company and West Goshen Police were dispatched as the local agencies having jurisdiction. They were assisted by other first responders and the Chester County Hazardous Materials Response team, hazmat team essentially. Goshen Fire and the hazmat team used monitoring equipment to measure air quality with no elevated readings outside of the building. Energy Transfer indicated that there was a small leak at a secondary seal, and the fire company and hazmat team confirmed that the station was placed into maintenance mode. The lines of the station were drained, and that there was no additional hazard before leaving the scene. All first responder units cleared and reopened Boot Road just after midnight, so about an hour, 45 minutes after the incident. Energy Transfer has a crew on site at the pump station today. So that's Mike Murphy's statement that he's been sending. So we will continue to monitor the situation. I know there were news reports or something that there was an explosion, fire, et cetera, that did not happen. Nothing like that happened. So again, that's it in a nutshell. I'm not sure what more.
Just a couple of questions from me, and then we'll see if the board has questions. So when the call came for the police and Goshen Fire to go there, they did their before Energy Transfer response, right?
Correct.
So can you give me kind of time frame for that? So this call to 911 was what time?
10:19.
And what time did we get a police presence there?
15 minutes.
Yeah.
And the fire company was actually on the scene before our office.
But you don't have access into the actual pump station, you're at the perimeter of it?
The police, we didn't go anywhere near it.
Okay.
So we got there, the fire company was already on scene, our officer went up, got a quick briefing from them, then assisted with traffic control.
When you say on the scene, were they actually inside the pump station or just around the perimeter of it?
She would not have gone inside, so she met them in the street, a distance from the pump station. They just said, what can we do to help you? They asked her to assist with traffic. She was there for about 45 minutes to that hour, 45, and then the fire police took over.
Okay. And what time did the Energy Transfer team respond to that? You know?
I don't have the exact time. It was soon after, but again, I think they deployed from Newtown Square, so I'm not. It could have been a half hour. I'm not sure exactly the time.
So we say half an hour.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Questions from the board?
I have a question. Are you still experiencing really late notification of these situations? Are we still kind of having to play catch up every time?
In all honesty, I received an email at 11:19 last night, so an hour plus later. I'm sorry, I was in bed, and it was an email. I was not called by Energy Transfer, so that's going to be one of my recommendations to Energy Transfer. Give me a call. Do not send an email at 11:19 at night, because I'm not checking email actively. I mean, it's Memorial Day night. A phone call would have been more productive, because I would have notified everybody here. But that was the only notification I received. But to be honest, that was the quickest notification I've gotten from Energy Transfer about an incident in probably several years. Typically, it's next day, even 2 days later. I'll hear it from Walker before I hear it from Energy Transfer.
Our fire marshal would have picked it up on her pager.
She did.
So she would have responded, yes or no.
She was there, yes.
I have a quick question. So they shut down Mariner 1,
Correct.
and is it still shut down as of now?
As far as I know, it has to be, because they haven't fixed.
It's very quiet.
Yeah, so our secondary issue, well, not secondary issue, our noise issue, which is on the agenda for tonight,
Right,
is
so-
gone
yeah.
because they're shut down.
Right, so I was
So
saying
that,
that
so we
those
know,
are
so,
related to
so
no.
Walker, now we know.
One small
Yeah, well,
here.
it's not a good way to find out.
So typically, when they shut it down, what is the procedure, if you know, of them being allowed to get it back up and running? Do they have to notify us? Do we have to do, does the PUC have to do an inspection? And do we have any jurisdiction to sort of, no?
No, I mean, we don't have any local jurisdiction at all. It's strictly a Public Utility Commission issue. They will be allowed to restart. They've drained between the valves, flared it off, because there is product in there that they can't allow to sit in there during this is just all, all the knowledge we've gathered through years. They can't allow the product to sit there while they're doing maintenance because they need access to those valves and the pumps. So they have to flare it off at the flare tower, evacuate the entire pipe between the valves, and then they can start working on it. So that's typically what we're told happens during emergency situations. But we have no say as to what to restart or we're just, we're essentially bystanders in the operations.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. What protocol is in place, given the incident that occurred, for our emergency responders to follow? I mean, once a call is put into 911, what protocol is to be followed to respond to that incident?
I mean, typically it's
That particular incident would fall under the fire company's jurisdiction, so they would make the call. I know the county's hazmat team was there, so my belief is they would take over the call when they arrived and make the decisions as far as any evacuations and notification.
So basically, it's up to the fire company to make those calls once they're on site?
Yes.
Does the fire company have the proper equipment to be able to read vapor such as this? Do they have the LAL meters to be able to monitor this vapor?
as far as I know, they do. Hazmat team
He said
definitely
they took
does.
readings, but I don't.
Yes, as far as I know, readings were taken by several different agencies. So, Walker, do you have anything else to?
What time did you call me? So at 11 o'clock, I went out and spoke to the firemen that were on site, and
10:33.
10:33, so I was out there 11:15. Goshen Fire was there, weren't anxious to talk to me. I wasn't in my PJs anyway. But they had taken readings outside the site, so they didn't find anything, but they had been obviously called by Sunoco, so they were waiting for somebody from Sunoco to show up, is my understanding. And I didn't see anything from Chester County until 11:45. So the county hazmat guys took a while. I think Goshen Fire did a really good job. I went back at midnight, spoke to Chief Everhart, and gave me the whole lowdown, and that's how we figured out where the noise was coming from, because they shut down the 12-inch pipe, which is the workaround for ME2. So today it's nice and quiet. Went out to get my newspaper. It was wonderful. If we could maintain that for forever, that would be. We all appreciate that.
So during our discussions about this humming noise, was it ever indicated by Energy Transfer that it was this pipe?
We've never gotten a clear answer about any, I'm not going to say anything. We've never gotten a clear answer from any of their engineers, any of their public relations people, no one, that it's even creating noise. Walker, would you agree with that?
Yeah.
Okay,
No,
so, I mean, Walker and I, almost on a daily basis, are in touch with Energy Transfer about this noise issue for months.
2 years.
Yeah.
So
I'm
2 years
I'm trying not to
ago.
think that far back, but yeah, absolutely.
2 years ago, I think it'll be 2 years ago in August, they did a workaround for ME2 because of issues with horizontal drilling around the library and others. So they engaged the other 1930s pipe that goes through the pump station, which is a 12-inch pipe. And that's the workaround for ME2. So that's pumping natural gas liquids right now, just propane down to Marcus Hut. But when they did that, they installed a new pump, which they haven't told anybody about, and it's been driving us crazy ever since. And I had hoped that they would finish ME2, go back to this pump pumping gasoline and fuel oil out west, but it's obviously taking them a lot longer. I've lived there since February of 1980, and I've only had issues over the last 6 years. I never knew the pump station was there until 6 years ago, and it's just been constant. And I met a couple of neighbors with me too. That poor Patty lives right across the street from Blue Road, and called me, texted me last night and said, "We got a problem."
Did you hear the alarm? going off?
No, but my dog started carrying on once all the emergency vehicles showed up.
Well, let me finish my line of questioning here, because I'm trying to get
Sorry.
somewhere, okay? I understand about the noise problem, that's something we're going to be dealing with.
No, this is a big safety issue too.
My concern is that in this instance here, it's happened to me is that the instrumentation that was put in place by Energy Transfer worked. It not only detected the propane, but also shut everything down. So what was put in place was performing properly. Let's take this one step further. Let's suppose that propane ignited. We no longer had a contained situation, but we had an active fire. Goshen Fire would arrive on scene. They have to be outside of the facility before Energy Transfer arrives in order to be able to address the situation? That's my first question. My second question is, if this situation did become more catastrophic than what we're dealing with so far, what would be the directive for the residents in the area to be able to respond to it? Are they supposed to stay to shelter in place, or are they supposed to move out of the area? So these are questions which I have, which I think we're going to have to consider, dealing with situations like, we're going to have to learn to live with this. Now, fortunately, we had a situation here that was contained, things worked the way they should have, but there's the possibility that things may not work the way they should. So I think there needs to be a plan put in place with the emergency operations plan that the county has in place, and also we do here at the township, to be able to address situations such as this that could end up in more of a catastrophic event. And I think there's something we need to take a look at.
Well, so we did send a letter a few months ago
Yeah.
to the county. And can you remind me of what that response was? I mean, we sent a letter basically saying, us in West Goshen Township, we are urging, the county to come up with an emergency response plan just in case something were to happen, because we're still obviously unclear about what to do in a situation like this. So can you remind?
Actually, I sent we
Yeah, I
received
have
a
it
letter.
here. Do you want me to read it out? It's pretty long, but it does answer some of the points we made. It also leaves some things loose.
It's the letter from the county in response? Okay, I mean, it's up to you, but you can read it if you want.
Yeah, I mean, because we're talking about this now, we could certainly go over some of these. I'll try to skip things that will boilerplate and just focus on the facts. So this is a letter from the County of Chester, Office of the Commissioners, and it was signed by them. It was in response to a letter that the West Goshen Township Board of Supervisors, this board, sent to the county back in November of 2020, and the response was February 9th. It says, thank you for your letter expressing your concerns regarding the ongoing pipeline issues that affect West Goshen Township, Chester County, and our region. Your request for a coordinated effort so that the community can feel confident that plans are in place for a worst-case scenario is commendable and is the responsibility of all levels of government and public safety officials. We appreciate your concerns as we have expended a considerable amount of resources to ensure that we are doing all we can to keep Chester County citizens safe. So that goes into some of the responses that they believe are in place. So I'll just go over those. Over the past several years, we have hosted, coordinated, and attended numerous forums between Energy Transfer, elected officials, first responders, townships, and concerned citizens. These meetings have spawned several other groups, such as the Pipeline Task Force. We also recently formed the Chester County Pipeline Safety Advisory Board. The board consists of, etc., etc. We appreciate the support and involvement of West Goshen on the board. We understand the concerns over construction problems, work hours, and safety. When our 911 center receives complaints or calls from residents who call to express concerns, the 911 telecommunicators dispatch the appropriate first responder agencies. This includes the Chester County Hazardous Materials Response Team, the HAZMAT team, local police, EMS, and fire service providers as needed. Our newly created Operations Communication Specialist, questions whether this is even effective, embedded in our 911 center to assist with informing the public of pipeline and other hazards throughout the county, have nearly completed their training program and will be in service soon. So this was February 9th. So is that operational or not? I don't know. Certainly, again, we're left with a lack of communication from this incident, both not only to the township, email response you got is not adequate, but the big concern that prompted our letter in the first place, if you remember, was we know that the residents don't know what to do, whether it's an incident like we had last night, a flare noise, a major incident. There is no information really that says this is the kind of protocol or what you should do, or this is how you will be communicated to in the event of such situation. Part of the reason we wrote that letter in the first place was we didn't feel that information was ready to say. It then goes, this response letter then goes on to talk about being involved, Chester County being significantly involved in trainings, exercises, and workshops. One of the questions we had was around how county-wide the training was versus this individual municipality approach to trying to respond to incidents, no matter where it is on this pipeline. And it talks about coordinating with the Energy Transfer Emergency Response Team, outreach trainings to Chester County. As part of our integrated preparedness plan, we are prepared to assist with exercises where local municipalities, first responders in the county can put their response plans in play to test their effectiveness. Well, guess what? We're testing it anyway with real incidents. So we don't think training is very secondary at the moment. It talks about the fact that we did request proposals for pipeline hazard vulnerability analysis and failed to get any appropriate bids because of the folks with that kind of knowledge being too close to the pipeline industry. So the county was not able to secure a competent organization that was independent enough. And it also talks about the Department of Emergency Services at the county working with the township managers, the fire companies, etc., to continue to have an overall all-hazard response to the pipeline, etc. So, I mean, there's some things in here that obviously it's all factual, but is it adequate is the real question. And I think the continuation of incidents where we're left with big gaps in communication, both to the township staff, board, and to residents, is continuing worry. And I think, as part of the follow-up to the county on this case, we're going to have to ask questions about what was supposed to be in place and did it work effectively, and if not, why not? And more importantly, raise again the question of how do residents get informed when it's 10:19 at night or 11:45 and they don't know what's going on, they don't know the scale of the incident or whatever else. So it's concerning. Folks who live nearby, would you like to share anything else from last night that you feel is relevant? You have your hand up over there. Hang on, Tina.
I'm actually right next door in West Whiteland, so she's from West Goshen.
Oh, that's okay, go ahead.
Okay, my name is Jeannie Marcel Kerslake, and I live in West Whiteland Township, also on the route of Mariner East, and so I was aware of what was going on last night. And I'm sorry I came in late, but I didn't hear it clarified. Was the leak on the 12-inch or on the 8-inch?
According to county DES, it was the 12-inch line.
The 12-inch. And they're both shut down right now and purged in the pump house?
Just the one.
Yeah, I've only been told the 12-inch is shut down.
Just the 12-inch, okay. And did anybody make any inquiries as to when the seal had last been replaced? What's the expected life expectancy on these things?
I haven't asked those questions. I don't even have all the information to even ask those questions.
They won't give us that information.
Yeah.
Well, what we do know is they shut down a couple months ago to replace a seal. They told Casey that in an email, so I notified everybody on my mailing list that there was going to be construction. And my fear is that we're suspicious that the seal that went last night was the one that they replaced. But, yeah, because the noise stopped 2 months ago.
Right.
For like 2 weeks because they couldn't get a part. And now, if you're in our neighborhood, it's quiet, so I assume it's the same 12-inch.
So just speaking about that walk, to me, it's, and this is supposition, so it's just my opinion. It sounds to me like this 12-inch line, there's two lines, the 8-inch and the 12-inch. The 12-inch is the workaround temporarily or maybe permanently, I don't know, but they've got a pump on this 12-inch line that has a seal that probably created the noise from day one it's put in, okay? The noise may or may not be an indication of misalignment, harmonics, winds, frequencies. Generally is a sign or could be a sign of something that isn't aligned right, and and therefore a seal will fail at some point if it's related to the rotation of the pump shaft. So that has a seal failure, maybe they picked it up early, they knew it was a problem, they fixed it, whatever it was, 6 months ago or whatever. So they didn't stop, they replaced the seal, they replaced the seal, they never fixed the underlying problem, so the second seal has failed. Now this is completely my supposition. You know, it's 30 years since I did engineering, but that sounds like a plausible explanation to me. We know this is the source of the noise. We all know that's where the noise is coming from. So the question is whether they're going to truly fix the problem now, both in terms of if there's an alignment issue or pipe vibration or stress that's being created on this pump shaft that's causing these seals to fail. And if so, it may or may not solve the noise problem at the same time. So I'm just speculating, but those are my thoughts as to potentially the connectedness of both the noise and these repeated seal failures. Okay.
And I have one last question. So you said the equipment worked the way it was supposed to. So when this alarm went off.
I didn't say that.
Oh, I thought somebody.
I read Mike Murphy's statement. I made no factual comments here at all.
Okay. All right.
That was strictly Mike Murphy. He's head of DES for the county. I read his statement.
Which probably came from Energy Transfer. Okay. So do you know if when this leak happened, if the flow automatically shut down, and where did that happen? Or did that gas keep flowing and leaking into the pump house until Energy Transfer arrived on the scene and did something to stop the flow?
My conversation with Joe Macero at Energy Transfer late this afternoon, he said the vapor detector detected the vapor and instantly shut down the operation, which means valves closed so no more product could be moving through the pipeline. Now, outside of the pump station, we have a valve downstream and upstream. I don't know how much, I know enough to be dangerous, but not enough.
So there are valves inside the pump house that they would shut off?
They're inside the station.
They're inside the station.
There are 3 pumps, 3 pump rooms. One of them's for ME1, one for what is now ME2, the 12-inch workaround. And there's a third one, I understand, that when we took the tour, there's another pipeline that runs out. 2 pipes go in from East Goshen, and 3 come out. One runs along Mary Jane Lane behind the houses, which is, we're told, not being used right now. So our Cooperwoods Township's consultant on the pipeline made sure that they installed automated valves. And he made one north and one south of this, or east or west.
Are they inside or outside the building, the valves?
There are 2 in the pipeline. How far? Do you remember where they are, Casey? I don't. There are automated valves on site, which I can see when I look through the fence. I don't remember from my tour of the pump house there were valves inside there or not.
I think they were all external. I don't think they were any inside. Actually, inside the building.
And my very last question are you expecting to get a full report from the county and or Energy Transfer and or the Public Utility Commission or PHMSA after this investigation? I assume there's going to be an investigation.
I would certainly hope so. I would suspect, in my opinion, to be very careful here, I would wait until the Public Utility Commission's report, because we have never gotten 100% clear information from Energy Transfer. So I'm going to wait until the PUC report on this incident comes out, for obvious reasons.
But we'll certainly request it.
Yes, absolutely.
Whether we get it voluntarily to share or whether we have to go and ask for it, we'll certainly ask for whatever information is available to be released to this township about this incident. Regarding the valves, the automated valves are hundreds of feet away from the pump station. Yes, they isolate a section of the line, but obviously that line's at a high pressure, So if you've got a leaking seal, it will continue to leak until response goes into the pump station, closes manual valves, and then opens up anything, whether it's automatic or not, to the flare and drains the inventory out. Once that line's pressurized, then of course they can perform the maintenance there. But this is, again, I don't know the design of the system. I'm just saying that, shutting on automatic valves, there's still an inventory at thousands of PSI in there. 1,700 PSI, I believe it operates that. So that will continue to press past the pump seal, the contents. It will only be small, but it would obviously be potentially hazardous environment for them to enter and solve the problem. But it is, to Mr. Helmer's point, it is, I believe, how this was intended to operate in the event of a pump seal failure. Any other comments from Tina? Go ahead.
Yeah, I have two things. I guess in setting constellation, usually the alarms are set at low, medium, high. So I'm assuming the one in the office was a low alarm, medium, and high is when it's like low. They usually got any of them lower, so that's some constellation. And then second of all, I guess you had mentioned initially, Casey, that it was propane, and then on Mike's comment, it was hydrocarbon. Totally different, different volatile materials. And I guess my concern is with the LEL, it's not necessarily as well percent. We pick up the propane, but it will pick up the hydrocarbons because it's more bubble vapor. So just because there is no LEL readings doesn't mean that there wasn't a hazardous condition.
So they don't have anything that would read propane?
Inside the alarm, yes, inside the building. It should have read propane, but when you're field screening outside, if you don't have the right instrumentation, it's not going to pick up the propane. It's only going to pick up the hydrocarbons.
But I think, and I don't know this for a fact, but I think our firemen had proper
Propane.
gauges.
Okay, that's why I asked.
Because we sent a bunch of guys to Texas, but I honestly don't know. I think that was part of the confusion, because when I spoke to the firemen, they said they got the call, they didn't have any readings,
Right.
but Sunoco didn't tell first responders that the issue was inside the pump house.
And that it's propane, not necessarily hydrocarbon, because that may make a big difference.
Propane is a hydrocarbon.
It's a form of it, but it's not as volatile as the hydrocarbons. Different terminology,
But
different instrumentation that we use to measure.
Every time we
And I
hear
don't
about
know.
the,
So I'm just asking. I don't know.
every time I hear about this pipeline, I mean, it's talked about the NGLs, natural gas liquids, which is ethane and propane. But every time there's an incident, we only hear about propane. And, ethane is the one that's even more volatile.
Exactly.
Not that they are both volatile, but,
Right.
I hope that our Goshen Fire and other have the right detectors for beyond the perimeter, but, it's propane. I think there's a kind of, I'd like to know if it was ethane and propane, because propane people are more comfortable with in a way. We can, we have propane grills, we have propane heating, and NGLs and everything else is more volatile and more dangerous. So it's a way I believe that when they release information of keeping it sounding like it's normal.
And consistent.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, but I believe it was the Environmental Hearing Board in the fall, either that or in the Safety 7 case. Energy Transfer testified that anyone, at that time anyway, was solely transporting ethane to the 8-inch. And I don't know if they've changed that now, but it was only transporting ethane.
It could be ethane in the 8-inch propane in this 12-inch line.
Yeah.
But it can separate it back at the source.
But it's my understanding that it is ethane at least.
Okay, so Casey, we're waiting on more information. We've got questions both for what the county responded to us in terms of communications and some of the way that, more information beyond what we received in terms of how this should happen in the first 24 hours. And obviously we want to know as best we can, what was the source of the problem, and how, we will obviously try to access that information. Is there anything else from the board?
I just had a quick question. I'm sorry. My name is Danielle Hatton. I am a state representative in the 150 beds up in Exton. but I have been working on this issue for almost 5 years now. I heard what happened last night. I'm on my way home from Poconos, and I called Jenny and said that I was going to come to listen. But I just wanted to point out something that I heard and didn't hear. One is that Energy Transfer's safety information that they mail twice a year, which we have directed residents to use as their information source, says that in the event of a leak, they should evacuate on foot upwind at least to 500 feet. What I've heard about what happened last night is that people came outside and asked what was going on, and they were told to shelter in place. That to me is an extreme concern when it comes to emergency response. We need to be asking that question very poignantly and clearly. That is the question that was asked in the 57 case, and Judge Barnes found in favor of the plaintiffs that these materials, these communications, do not give information, enough adequate information to residents to know what to do. This is a perfect example, and I'm really concerned because it's the second issue that has happened on this specific site, and I don't want the third one to be the one that's catastrophic and we don't know what to do after twice now. And so I just wanted to point that out because I think it's an important question. I think it's the most poignant question that has to be asked. When Lisa Drive experienced a sinkhole that exposed the 8-inch pipeline, the system failed, the emergency response system failed because when 911 was called, we rely on the company to tell us if it's an emergency or not. The person who responded on behalf of the company told the first responder, the police officer who showed up, that it was not an emergency and therefore it got closed out in the system. I was getting phone calls from residents who lived in the neighborhood who all day long did not know what was going on. And I live in Exton, at least 5 miles away, so I spoke the next day to someone from emergency services and just said, why am I getting phone calls in Exton? I'm a state representative. I don't know. I'm not an emergency personnel. I'm not a first responder. Why are people calling me, asking me what's going on that live across the street from what's happening? Why don't those people know what's happening across the street from their home? And so, to me, having scoured every piece of legislation, every piece of law that relates to this issue, that is the crux of the emergency response problem. We are relying on a corporation to tell us when something is enough of an emergency to actually follow their procedures that they've communicated, and their interest is not in protecting the public, their interest is in protecting their asset. And the state, the municipality, is who is legally held responsible for public safety. There's a mismatch in terms of responsibility. There's a mismatch in terms of who's financially responsible. And I just want to point that out because I heard Ashley say that we don't know what to do. This is the second time this has happened here, where there's been an incident where we don't know what to do. I don't fault you all for not knowing what to do. I just want to point out that very pointed question.
Well, so Danielle, thank you so much because I completely agree with you, and that's a good segue into sort of the last comment that I was going to make tonight, and more of a question, and maybe even a legal question. I've only been on the board for about a year, so this agreement that was signed between West Goshen Township and Sunoco back in I don't even know the year.
2015, I think is what it was.
2015. Okay. I'm often questioning what our ability is as a township to have our own emergency response plans in place and what legal, like how we're bound legally because of that agreement. And I think I need to do some more homework in figuring out exactly what constraints that puts on us. But at the same time, I kind of don't care because, like Danielle said, this is the second incident now that's happened. And at some rate, I want to make sure that our own emergency responders, our fire companies, our police, you know, if we're asking ourselves these questions about, well, do we really know if the gauges measure this certain thing? Like, I want to actually know that they do. Like, I want to know that our people have those gauges and that it works. I want to know that our people are trained and that it works. I want to know that we have an alarm system, if need be. I don't know what that's going to look like, but maybe anybody who lives within a certain proximity to the pipeline literally has an alarm in their house that will alert them that something's going on and immediately they get a response. Because, like Danielle said, I found this out through Facebook this morning from a resident who messaged me and said, like, what is going on? I have, you know what I mean? And so there's a clear lack of communication. I know we're trying to work with the county. I know that we sent that letter, and that's fine. But on some level, I also think we need to kind of do this on our own to some extent. And so I just want to throw that out there. Maybe we can have a conversation about that.
Yeah, I mean, this whole incident throws up the fundamental fallacy of how to respond to this, because, to your point, Danielle, they get an alarm at Energy Transfer and they notify 911. They don't know what it is. They don't know how big the leak is. All they know is there's an alarm going off. They're not the ones making the determination on what this incident is. The fire company arrive and start measuring, is it beyond the perimeter of the pump station, in which case it is a big emergency, or is it, contained within the pump station house? So the first responders, Goshen Fire Company, they're the ones who are actually making the decision around what scale of incident this appears to be at the pump station. So we can't rely on Energy Transfer monitoring it from a control room or waiting until somebody shows up from, where did you say, media?
I think they're Newtown Square.
Newtown Square, an hour later, and say, well, is this just a pump seal failure that's contained on the site? I mean, their response to it is this a leak? They would say, no, it wasn't a leak. It didn't go beyond the perimeter of the plant. It's no problem. We did what we needed to do. But they don't know that. They're relying on the fire company to find out the scale of the incident. And by then, the residents, they're all aware of something going on. They don't know whether it's how big the problem could be. So there's a fundamental fallacy about how you respond to the emergencies with this pump station, in my opinion.
Or if I can offer, a lot of the problem stems from the fact that PUC maintains control, and that is up to the legislators to change that. That needs to be changed.
That's why I was here tonight, just to listen. I have a bill that just got referred to Consumer Affairs, which is who oversees PUC, and I plan to talk to them about why this bill is so important, using this example. But it would require Title 35 to actually be followed, and for an early detection warning system to be paid for by Energy Transfer, but a clear communication system, a risk assessment, based on municipality, a fee to the pipeline company for the investment in the system to determine what needs to happen. And so that was why I came, because I just want to hear how this all unfolded, because it seems to be the same thing over and over. No matter where incidents are happening, it's this big gap between Energy Transfer and our first responders, and then what happens to people living nearby. And most of the time, the people living nearby have absolutely no idea what's going on, except they know something's going on.
I would add one other thing. There's an app available for your phone called Pulse Point. And I would suggest that everybody in that vicinity get Pulse Point on their phone. They can punch into it.
So that's how
That's
I
how you
found
send
out
it
what
out.
was going on, was because I saw it on Pulse Point. Whenever I see a siren, I turn it on.
Very good.
And that's how I reached out to Walker. But I would say that we didn't really know anything more than there was an alarm. What's the alarm for? Are we supposed to leave? And when I saw the traffic being rerouted down Hamlet Hill, I got my kids out of bed. And I was like, we're out of here. And we drove over to ACAC because I'm a member there, and it seemed like the right direction to go the other way. I wouldn't have gotten in my car if they had completely stopped all the traffic.
Which they eventually did do.
So, but at that point, there was still traffic. And then by the time I got to ACAC, I think I told you there's a hazmat response now. I'm glad we left. And then you showed up. So here we all are in the parking lot of ACAC in our pajamas, not knowing what to do, and I've got 2 kids in the car, and my dog and my cat.
So what's an action item that this board can take right now?
Do you want me to invite Mike Murphy to our June 15th meeting?
Is he the director of emergency services?
Yeah, sure. Good stuff.
Yeah, just to circle back, the emergency operation plan, which we already have in place here in the township, is an all hazards plan. It's very generic, and it does not address specifically certain kinds of events, such as the one we're discussing, the pipeline emergencies. We need to have an annex, an addendum to this, that would address specifically pipeline emergencies and develop a protocol and how to respond. Now, you can't answer every specific incident that would occur, because every incident is going to be individualistic, of course, but it can give a general layout of the protocol that needs to be followed to establish those lines of communication that need to be developed, and not just a haphazard kind of thing where basically we're reinventing the wheel every time an incident occurs. So, and also we can have a procedure put in place which can be tested with field operations. It actually checks its proficiency and its sufficiency. But that's where we need to go. And we can argue whether we do it just on the township level or the countywide level, but in a perfect world it should be on the countywide level because the pipeline covers through many townships. But we can at least start something here and get other townships to get involved with it as well. But that's where we need to go.
John, I think you're going to get a lot of pushback, and the pushback is going to be coming from the security angle, and how important the functions are of pipelines was demonstrated just recently. So when they shut down the one that comes from Houston up here.
I think it's a really good idea to have Mr. Murphy come because I believe, Danielle, correct me if I'm wrong, there wasn't the state legislature passed a law to kind of force, in my words, energy transfer to give county emergency services their response plan, or at least
to be able to
view that plan. And it wasn't shared. It was that the law did not allow it to come to the municipality level.
Right.
So we're relying on the county to understand how to respond. And again, it's this deficiency around the first people to show up for this Goshen Fire Company, and how in the know are they around the kind of information John was talking about, a comprehensive plan that allows them to know if they're the ones making an assessment as to whether it leads beyond the property line or not, because they're the first there.
I don't know if that legislation ever made it through the Senate.
Did it get passed?
It passed the House. And I have to look to see if it ever passed the Senate. I'm not
So-
sure if it actually did.
Okay.
And the Safety 7 case also, if you look at that finding, that has to still be confirmed by the commissioners, but they also address that issue and also require the school districts to have that information in the legal proceeding. So these are all really good questions, and I would encourage everyone to take a look at the ruling from the Safety 7 case that just came out a couple weeks ago by Judge Barnes. She outlines a lot of the remedies as part of her ruling.
What was the case number again? I'm sorry.
It's called Flynn et al. We call it the Safety 7 because it's 7 residents of Chester and Delaware County, and then there were 3 pro se complainants.
Okay.
And I think one thing people always turn back to, well, we haven't got Energy Transfer's emergency plan. It also, they don't have one. And I mean, Danielle mentioned it before. Their responsibility is not to develop a plan to protect the citizens. Their emergency plan is really just protecting their assets. So it's not like the townships and the counties and the school districts are all waiting for this thing to be presented to them. This is what you do, because it would be incomplete. It just involves some technical stuff. So, I mean, the county commissioners a couple years ago made a big deal about getting a redacted plan, but their responsibility falls way beyond that.
But that would just reinforce my belief that the county needs to develop kind of scale of plans that would adequately satisfy the residents' needs. Whether it's the residents of West Goshen have an operating pump station, which is the most likely source of the leak on this line, let's be honest. And also the residents in the county who are sitting on the pipelines, that what will happen if there was a pinhole or a bigger leak in one of the lines themselves.
I agree that the county needs to be obviously the facilitator of this at a large scale, but on some scale, we are the responsible party too. And I feel like it's up to us in this township to do whatever we can to make sure that we're not sitting around waiting for a plan. And so another action item that I would like, can Andrea come to our meeting on the 15th and give us an update on, I want to know more about this gauge technology that our fire, I would like to kind of learn more about that and see what the capabilities are.
I'll get you an application of the fire company.
Yeah, with all the time that I have, right? I'll be
Yeah, let me invite Grant over too from Goshen. Might as well have everybody here.
It would be a good conversation, yeah.
Yeah, okay, good.
So I have one more question I'd like to ask of Danielle. Are you experienced or are you seeing in your community, in your broader community, individual organizations? So let's take Hamlet Hill where Walker lives. Nice development, close-knit families, everyone knows each other, they take care of each other, you can tell from how they constantly monitor what's happening. At one point, I was proposing, I think it was probably in 19, what we could be doing to help train the residents of these different developments. I think about, Shannon as well. All townhouses, mostly townhouses, very, very tight, kind of, nobody could probably get their cars out of there if they did not have a plan.
Yeah, if we had emergency,
Right.
absolutely.
So are you aware of any communities who have already been able to start reaching out to those developments to start maybe a conversation on how maybe the residents have to invest with some kind of expert? I don't know if the township has any ability to have any responsibility for that. Back to your point, Ashley, whether that's something that a municipality can do to do that on behalf of the citizens.
There's Casey attended a meeting with me on this one. Linda Farrell with the Pipeline Safety Coalition had a grant, and they established a community awareness network, which was beginning to get some traction, connecting all the townships and all the communities where the pipelines went through, so that we all share, common values and information. When Mike Murphy, the county commissioners, started the PSAB Pipeline Safety Advisory Board, which again Casey and I are both on, is sort of falling short in terms of, well, we've been at this for over a year and we haven't accomplished anything yet. So Linda Farrell's working on starting this CAN network again to try and bridge some of the gaps with the county commissioners. So I'll throw that out there. And a final comment, the biggest fear I had last night was fear of that. So Carol and I went and talked to the firemen. They said there was a leak. They didn't know it was specifically in the pump house. Patty was already gone. I just said, you know what, it's just not worth the risk. So I woke Carol up and went to ACAC. It was more than 2,000 feet away, and it's higher ground. So, but, did anything happen? No. But I really didn't, no one could give me any answers until after midnight when I got back and I spoke to Chief Norton. And my understanding is that a lot of my neighbors were walking around asking questions, and they were told to shelter in place.
Right.
Well, if it's as serious, nobody was there to really mitigate our fears. And I think a lot of that's Sunoco. Sunoco had said, look, there's a leak in the pump house. We're monitoring it, and that's fine, but we didn't know where the leak was.
Our other neighbor that's next door to me called Sunoco, because we have a number that we're supposed to call. So first he called 911, and they said they're looking at it, and then he called Sunoco, and Sunoco said, we have no idea what you're talking about. And he said, what should I do? Am I going to stay here? If I stay here, am I going to die? And I said, beats the heck out of me.
Robin, to answer your question, Linda has been working on these community networks since I've known her, and it's been going on for a really long time. But I've yet to see anyone successfully do that. But as an elected official, it kind of infuriates me to even think about the idea that this burden should be put on our residents at all, especially an investment. Like, our residents shouldn't be having to make private investments in their safety because of a private corporation that's brought a risk to our communities. As government officials, it's our job to hold those corporations accountable to them. And so, while I totally appreciate the community advocacy, that's how I came to this work. I believe it's a necessity because of the failure of government and the failure of this corporation. And if we could do something like that, it would be wonderful, but it's not a solution to this problem. It is the job of government to regulate these corporations, and it is the responsibility of these corporations to be good neighbors. And they're failing. And it's our job, in our roles, to be pushing back and holding them accountable to their responsibilities to our community. So, like, I really personally, in my role, don't talk about putting this burden on our residents. It's already a burden to them. It shouldn't be their burden to carry. And which is why a neighbor who lives across the street or next to this pump station should not be calling or Facebook messaging Ashley the next morning to find out what happened. That's just not okay. It's not okay that they don't have the information about what's happening in their backyards with the properties that they own, that are their wealth and their investments. And so,
Right, which I'm not complaining about because
I know, and I'm not complaining either.
Yeah,
I don't have
that's why we're doing what we
Right.
do, but at the same time,
it's not,
Yeah.
it's not their responsibility. It's the corporation's responsibility, and it's our responsibility in government to hold them accountable. And so, unfortunately, the community is in the position to have to protect themselves. I live in a neighborhood just like this neighborhood, and I literally live next to the pipeline, and I have it right near me too, and I get it. I understand fears. I have 2 little kids. I have a crazy dog. Like, if I had to leave my house at 10 o'clock at night, I would clean my house a little bit. I wouldn't live this way. But it's not fair. It's not fair for our residents to have to live this way.
Thank you. Any other thing? Tina, you want more comment?
Yeah, one more comment, just to follow up on her comment, also Ashley's. I have HAZWOPER training and also 48-hour OSHA training, and one of the things that we did.
Tina, could you speak up just a little bit?
Oh, okay.
Into the microphone, please.
Up here? Yeah. Okay.
There's a switch on the top there. You just flip it up or down.
Yep, should be up.
Hear me? Yeah.
There you go.
Got it. Okay. Just to follow up on the 2 comments, Ashley, I was just saying that I have HAZWOPER training and also 48-hour OSHA training, and one of the things that we did was, that you do in that training is to have a emergency response team. And I'm just wondering, just following up on what you said, if the township legally can do something like that, where you can not rely on the county, not rely on the government, but the township have their own emergency response team, and it's usually a third party that is trained in that type of emergency response, and you could work with the county with the team, or have it separate if you're not willing to work with, us for any reason. But it may be a good follow-up just to start our own in the township. Go out there. But, you can have 2 different teams go out and still kind of coordinate and work together. Just as a suggestion. They want to, and then have our own emergency response policies and procedures relating to that emergency response team.
Thanks, Tina. Does Goshen Fire Company have HAZWOPER training? They're responders. They have HAZWOPER training.
Oh, yeah.
So our response is to the fire company, and they should have most of the training as far as I'm aware.
So some of them went to Texas.
So that's
They went down for pipeline training,
Yeah.
hazmat training.
Do they have their own emergency
Goshen
response team now?
Fire had a couple of assistant chiefs. I don't know how many people they sent down, but Sunoco paid that. I don't know how many went, but at least.
Can they actually respond, like if there's a cleanup or something that needs to happen, they can actually?
I understand.
Okay.
Talk to Mr. Fuller at Goshen Fire.
Well, we've got Mr. Murphy coming here at the next meeting. We're going to get the fire chiefs. We can explore the whole situation with respect to who does what and how, and who's got the training and instrumentation for monitoring leaks. We'll see if we can continue to dig deeper than perhaps we've done it so far. So I just want to go back to our original agenda item. I know we're still on the pipeline here, but the noise issue. So let's play a scenario out where we can do whatever we do with this particular incident, but this line is back in service with pumps that are creating noise. Well, what was our conclusion at the last discussion on this? That we would go to the nuisance approach was the first plan of attack, right, Casey? And then second was to also look at potentially our own ordinance relative to nuisance noise.
Yeah, we have an existing noise and vibration ordinance. We're one of the first in the Commonwealth to have a vibration ordinance. Knock on wood, we have not had to use the vibration ordinance because we've never gotten complaints. Now we're back to this humming, whatever noise, which we thought we had solved a couple of years ago. And our requests for please investigate just.
Well, we've
done that.
Well, if you correct me if I'm wrong, it was solved on MU1.
Correct.
So we believe there is a solution to this.
Yes. Yeah,
So
so
that means
no
the
go.
12-inch line, to different purposes, got the same issue that the 8-inch line originally had to solve. So we don't understand why there's a hesitancy to check it out by Energy Transfer and give us a similar or same solution.
Right. Yeah, we spent 9 months a year with Sunoco isolating the issue. They brought in sound engineers. They had sound detection devices all around the facility. What, 4 or 5 years ago? 2016, I think, is when they got it into service, and they solved the problem. Energy Transfer, they said, I'm being funny. They sent a guy out. Oh, I don't hear anything. Back in the truck. I mean, it's that simple of an investigation. Where before we had sound engineers and months and months long sound acoustic investigation, and they solved the issue. We can't even get a respondent.
So what's our approach through the county, the DA, the nuisance approach?
The DA has a settlement agreement with Energy Transfer about any nuisances, and by their nuisances, that's why I was a little not hesitant to contact them. Their definition of a nuisance was one of those inadvertent returns where the drilling mud comes back and gets all over the street. That's a nuisance, obviously. So I proposed to the DA's office that this humming noise be considered a nuisance. It's a quality of life issue for our residents. I received a call from one of the DA in charge of it. They're still looking at it. I have no update as of tonight, but they said they would look at it as a nuisance. And I provided an entire report. I spoke to the DA on the phone, or the ADA on the phone, and the gentleman who I spoke with, just in our discussion, considered it a nuisance. So that was just a few weeks ago, so things have to take time to go through.
But have you had a contact from Energy Transfer around noise issue? Wasn't there recently a list of people kind of thing, or was that from someone else?
That was Kristen Camp, our solicitor, went to the head of general counsel for land acquisition. It wasn't their general
real
counsel.
estate.
It was their real estate attorney, but their chief real estate attorney. She had a relationship with him, and I provided the list of names because, it's always Walker complaining or me. But it's the entire neighborhood who's hearing this, so we provided a list of names. So it wasn't just, some guy who thinks he's hearing something. It's the entire neighborhood who's hearing it. It's not just an isolated
Well, Kristen reached out, I think, last week, got a response, and the response was really a question to gather more information.
Right, exactly.
They asked how constant it was.
Yeah.
The response was constant.
Yeah, I responded back
So,
constant
yeah.
and the list of names.
Yeah.
So,
I'm not too, it doesn't sound like this is going to me, it just sounds like someone else in an organization that's asking for more information is not going to do anything really with it. So, so right now we're relying on hearing back from DA around their considerations to whether this complaint falls under the nuisance categorization.
correct.
And if not, then our plan B is to progress our own ordinance, correct?
Correct. Now, we do have and I still need a chance to review it. Ernie Holling from Cato has provided a model. Linda recommended not using harmonics anymore because it's not really definable, but a hum kind of amendment to our ordinance for these weird sounds that they're not violating our decibel limits, but they're constant and irritating noise that through 2 years of complaints they haven't been able to.
So do we know, Kim, I don't know if you have any knowledge on this, is there the ability to enforce and you know, not getting to long legal arguments about the definition of hums and whines and constant. Is this really something that legally has a sound basis in terms of a strategy for us?
Well, I mean, I think it's probably something you need to investigate, especially if the DA's office doesn't find there's a root there. I mean, it can be successful, nuisance ordinances, noise ordinances get upheld. So, you know, it carries some weight.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, with other noise issues that we've dealt with, we've cited NB Homes, we have cited the contractors working at Woodlands for starting at 5:30 in the morning, which are not allowed to. They have been upheld in district court. Now, obviously, they can appeal to the Court of Common Pleas, but, you know, we'll just take
And
it there.
sometimes just having an ordinance and trying to enforce it, moving to litigation gets someone to actually move on
Yeah,
something.
exactly.
Especially if there's a solution to it from
Yeah,
there.
if there's an engineering solution to this, we know there is. We know there is.
And just for clarification, I just want to understand why we would have a need for developing a nuisance standard to address this particular instance. In our current noise ordinance 52A, it clearly states that no person shall operate or permit the outdoor operation of any powered tool, equipment, or machinery in such a manner as to be plainly audible across the property line except between the hours of 7 a.m. and 9 p.m. every day of the week. And then it does describe sound as being what's being described here as a harmonic noise. Just for your clarification, why do we need to expound on what we already have? And why can't we enforce what we already have?
I've had extensive discussions with Ernie Akato, and his recommendation with all the research he was doing as part of the pipeline group was that is not specific enough to meet the legal threshold for this type of issue. So operating machinery, a judge could say it's a lawnmower or a truck, but a pump inside a building 400 feet away, it probably would not be construed as something enforceable under our ordinance. So he's recommending going a further step of amending the code for this very specific issue. So we have more defense in for it.
Okay. Is there any other comments or questions around the noise situation? Is there any member of the public that would like to comment on the noise situation?
It's all the time. Can't use my sunroom because it's all. And I tried to record it on my phone, and I can't hear it on the phone. So it makes me think it must be vibrational rather than a hum.
And again, that's why Sunoco spent 9 months to a year with all of those detector devices surrounding the site, so they can isolate, see exactly where it's coming from. Normal recording devices may not pick it up. That's why they need to hire staff.
The last one, they actually insulated the pipes going into the station, and they had a big hole in the wall, so they plugged the hole. They were able to do something to the pump to stop the vibrations. There's a piece of research out there on how to correct these noises, because evidently in repurposed old pipelines this is common, and it can be damaging. But it's just, if we poke them enough, hopefully they'll.
So you don't know whether the pump room for this 12-inch line has got insulation on the pipes and the whole plug like we saw on ME1.
It could going. They took some of the insulation off when they put in the new pump. They had an issue, but one part of the sound abatement was they put up this great wall, so now it's harder for me to spy on them. But I honestly don't know if they've insulated the pipes.
I'll go back to my previous assertion again. It's only my opinion that maybe some of this vibration or whatever else is one of the reasons they're having some steel failures on this pump. Because if there is something that's not stabilized enough, it's creating both the noise issue and the destruction of the steel. Yeah.
So then what is what step are we taking? What's our action item to the sound?
So right now, I heard that it was Casey's waiting for a response from the DA's office, and then depending on that, as the first avenue, that seems like, it doesn't seem like there's an interest there in going down to nuisance as currently being worked as the way to deal with the inadvertent returns. If that doesn't really seem like applicable to us, then we're going to ask Buckley Bryan to look at what John described, whether it's good enough as is or whether it needs the additional refinement, and then we would update our ordinance, and then we would attempt to enforce it.
Do we want to put a time frame on how long we're willing to wait for the day? Or?
I would just say 2 more weeks till the June meeting, honestly, and then you can authorize
Okay.
us to provide the ordinance,
Okay.
or take a look at it and go from there.
That's good.
Yeah.
Have we formally notified them with a letter that this is a big deal and we want to address it?
I was going to wait till the DA gave us the last response, because a letter from the DA would hold more weight than we could ever think of.
Because the county commissioners are ready to endorse with
Yeah.
your letter, so we'll have a little bit more push with it.
Well, we can decide that strategy on who
Yeah.
writes what when.
Okay.
At the 15th,
Yeah.
or if you would like to attend that next meeting. Okay, any other comments or questions?
Just thank you for
Yeah, thank you
bringing
for
your
being here.
information forward. It's got to be very difficult to put it that way. We need to make some good plans sometime forward.
All right, moving on our agenda, the 5th item is a discussion of a recreational splash pad installation at the community park.
Do you want me to take this? Since
Sure.
I'm the one that got it too. Okay. So a couple weeks ago, it started getting hot, and I had been hearing from residents for a while that they want something for their kids to play in when, you know, the heat gets pretty bad, which we all know our summers are kind of getting out of control these days. And so one of the obvious ideas is to put a splash pad in one of our community parks. Bell Tavern Park in Downingtown has a splash pad park that's really popular among families around here, but they have to drive all the way to Downingtown, say all the way to Downingtown. But I mean, you know, when it's hot, you kind of just get your kids, you know, to water. Obviously, pools can be expensive for some families. They, you know, just can't swing it. So I think it would be a great thing to give to the community for the kids to be able to have access to, you know, cold water play during the summers. I know that John something, it's a park in Westchester Borough, has something kind of like it, but I know that it's not a very popular place to go, and I'm not sure how often they have it turned on. I'm not really sure what the mechanics of all of it are. This thing that Casey sent to us, you have in your packet, looks pretty cool. I mean, it says that it's operates without electricity, is that right? Or what?
It's water pressure.
It's water pressure, yeah.
Actually, do you know if the one at Downingtown that's popular is similar to this particular vendor's?
I don't know what vendor they use. I don't even know if they just use water pressure. It's definitely more of a modern take on it. I don't know if you know, Casey, the answer to that
I
question.
know, it went in a few years ago, but it's extremely popular.
Yeah, so,
But I don't know the manufacturer.
yeah, neither do I, but it's nice. But these actually look kind of nicer in my opinion. And so you can obviously see from these packages, there's so many options. They range in price from, you know, 23 or 25,000 all the way up to, I mean, probably upwards of 70. So there's a lot of options that we would have to choose from. I know that I asked Casey, I wasn't sure if the relief funds that we're getting from COVID would cover something like this. You thought maybe they would?
I think they would. We would obviously check with that to make sure that it's a community infrastructure piece, so I would think so.
And I believe Ken Blair looked at this a couple of years ago.
I'd say 6 to 7 years ago, and I don't want to go into old gossipy business, but we weren't allowed to bring it to the full board. I'm just going to stop there. But we had a spot picked out, so the picture community park. There's the existing basketball court that's there, right across from the Arc, which is very good too. There's a flat space parcel, or flat area there, perfect spot for it. We don't have to build a rain garden because we're not recycling the water. The systems are gross and they're high maintenance. So the water would sheet flow off, it's about 50 gallons a minute. So I believe General Recreation, this company, would help us design a rain garden to take the sheet flow. And this is just my recollection, but I believe we have, other than the equipment, which is in here, I believe the township would have had to hire a concrete contractor. And for some reason, I think for the recycled water, it was we needed an electrician because there was electrical components, but this would just be water pressure, essentially, a valve with a force main, and that's it.
Wow.
That's it.
So we're bringing this up tonight.
Yep, just to start the discussion.
Start the discussion.
Yeah.
We can address it, at the 15th meeting, or, obviously budget discussions are going to be happening soon, and we're getting those funds in.
Well, I think it's a great addition in terms of an amenity for residents, and especially for, obviously the targets the young children, and, I don't see that as being something that would be, it seems manageable in terms of the cost and the benefit. But that's just my opinion. So what's the rest of the board's thought?
Well,
The idea tonight is do you want to pursue it further?
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. It's be something great to do for the community. Let's get some bids. I mean, this is just a package. This just tells you what part of the cost is going to be.
Yeah.
There's going to be all the other ancillary costs as well, the installation and rain garden, whatever else. So we would have to come up with a design with one of these and with all the other costs associated. So I get some numbers. So we would need to know. My concern would be the cost, so we need to get some bids. My other concern would be liability. What kind of liability might the township assume if we did install one of these things? So we would have to consider that, so we'd have to get an opinion from our solicitor about that. And then following from that, are there any safety issues concerned with this? With these things being installed in the past, have there been any incidences where kids have gotten hurt? I mean, we need to know that, what we're getting ourselves into. So those are my three main concerns, but at this point, I think it might be okay to go ahead and get some numbers here on what it would actually cost us to pursue this.
Okay, so could you check with our insurance carrier around, whether this is fairly routine for them to have to cover this type of amenity?
They like these before pools.
Oh,
For
yeah.
obvious reasons,
Yeah, yeah.
there's a, zero chance of drowning
Yeah.
with this, but.
Adult health, that's East Callan. So we can always talk to East Callan and see what their experience is.
Yeah.
And that's been in for 5 or 6 years ago.
Insurance classification is on-site amusements.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we ask specifically for this type of, some exclusion, as insurance contracts. Well, you had a question?
Yes, and that's actually, I don't recall this when I was talking about Marsh Creek, whether or not it was actually in concrete, or whether it had one of those kind of like spongy, so that the kids could still run around with their little, do you have an understanding of whether or not this is going to be one of those types of?
I think that's up to the buyer. I think that's.
Okay, you think that they offer that as a choice?
I would think
East
so.
Ocean
because-
Park just put that in their whole place,
Yeah.
and it's awesome.
Exactly.
I mean, they're awesome.
Does it have the spongy?
They do, yeah.
Oh, well, that's the one I would go for.
Yeah, yeah, it's really,
That's the right way to
the other idea that I also had too was that I think that we would maybe see a boost in our pavilion rentals.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I know that that's a place that I would love to take my kids for a birthday party,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, when we were looking at this that many years ago, Ken and Tom actually did I'm not sure if they actually spoke to people or just a visual survey. Our park use goes way down during hot spells, to the point where parents aren't taking their kids to the playground. It's just too stinking hot. They're either there very early in the day or very late. So this type of amenity helps invite people in, keep them there if they have a place to cool off. It's simple as that. Simple as that.
Rick, 50 to 60 gallon a minute rain garden management for water. Do you have any sitting over there having heartburn over this, or are you relaxed and can't wait to get your feet wet?
I would really prefer to
We're going to get
recycle
you the
it.
spongy one.
I would really prefer to recycle it. I mean, that's not an insignificant amount of water to put in a rain garden. But, I mean, if you size the rain garden properly,
So the water runs into a garden?
Well, this probably wouldn't be on all the time, you know? I mean,
No, it's user activated, so
Yeah.
Well, I did like that feature where you kind of push the button and not fly.
And the user, meaning us, controls the time and everything else. So,
Right.
you know, we've extended warm season into September. You can keep it on. If it gets cold early, but just we have to drain the system
Yeah.
and do the maintenance, obviously.
So to John's point, you know, a bit more information about options and costs.
Absolutely.
Is that with Ken then to do that?
Yeah, Ken,
I mean, we've thrown all this at you and him.
Sure.
So you need a month to figure it out?
We can have it right back on the 15th, honestly.
Awesome.
He has his file of what we looked at those years ago, and we've always itched to get it back, for sure. So, yeah, we'll get in touch with General Recreation tomorrow, and they're on CoStar, so anything we buy from them is on CoStar, so it's a contract.
Can we also look into the life expectancy?
Sure.
As well?
And maintenance as well. I mean,
Yeah,
is this a high maintenance kind of, are you familiar with these at all?
No.
Yeah, and that was the reason why we looked at just the non-recycled water, because there's chlorine involved, and you have to maintain the water quality.
Right.
So there's chemicals involved, and we just didn't think, we'd rather overbuild a big rain garden than, and have a new wild area there instead of trying to do everyday water testing.
You see there's one in Downingtown?
Yes.
Yeah.
Why do we, how are they structured? How are they set up, do you know?
That's.
Let's go to East Goshen tomorrow. Check it out. They
Well,
got one
Ken's got
too.
really information.
Well, they don't have a splash
No,
pad.
let's
They
just
have,
go.
oh,
Which one do they have?
they have the
the
squishy
material.
stuff,
Oh,
yeah.
the squishy.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, we can reach out to East Callan and see
Yeah,
what there's.
yeah, we asked Barb there and asked her whether it's,
Yeah.
because she's been there for a long time. So.
That's been there for,
Yeah,
I used that when my kids were little, and they're 18 now.
Yeah.
So it's been there a
Oh,
long time.
no.
Yeah, it's been there a while. Yeah, the Eaton's Splash Pad's been there for a long time.
Yeah, they were one of the first in the area that went in and stuff.
I mean, once you pipe it, you've got the service, and that's sure the maintenance is just some of the.
Yeah, I mean, there's got to be wear and tear on the,
Yeah,
on
it's
some
not,
of the
can't be
items.
that expensive to keep those. All right, good. Any other comments, questions from the board or anyone attending tonight?
I just feel like there's a fair amount of discrimination. Why can't the adults also be on there?
I know, that I did think
Oh,
about
so they're the ones who are
that.
gonna get hurt.
That's true. They're going to sue.
Yeah,
They're going to sue.
Oh, to be a kid again.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, I
Agenda item number 6,
Trying to re up everybody.
discussion approval of designation of agent resolution for PEMA reimbursements. Casey?
Yeah, we're finally in the position to request our final reimbursement from HEMA for our COVID expenses. And in all honesty, I've gathered every single receipt possible outside of the initial cleaning of the building when, March 11th, 2020, we had no idea what was going on with COVID, so we went overboard to clean the building because of the exposure next door. Without that expense of $50,000, we've spent less than about $10,000 on masks, sanitizer, et cetera. Most of our people instantly went to homemade masks and stuff, so our use of masks, at least on this side, wasn't that heavy, so we haven't experienced that much of an expense. We're able to apply for 75% of reimbursement, so we're going to be requesting about $35,000 back from HEMA.
Chief Carroll, did you have any expenses on the police side that Casey may not have been aware of?
There's probably minor mask purchases. We received a lot of donations.
Yeah.
I can look into that and see how much it was. We did buy one sprayer to
Yes.
clean the cells, and that was about $900.
I think I got that.
Okay.
Yeah, I've been working with Cindy next door to get all the receipts.
So you will have those then?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I have everything. I think there's, in total, maybe 45 different categories of items that we purchased over the past years.
Would any of the overtime that was given to the employees during that period also come under this?
It could, but we did not designate it as COVID hazard pay at the time. So it was so early in the process, we didn't know what was going on. So I was not inclined to change our payroll, essentially, at this late date to do that. So that was, I can't remember the number, $14,000 maybe.
I think it's closer to like 40 grand, the overtime payment for that period of time. Why do you feel not comfortable in submitting that as part of this?
Well, it's got to be designated as hazard pay. We didn't do that, it was just strictly overtime. So unless it's designated that in our payroll system, which we didn't do at the time, because we stopped it immediately, well, we can't apply for it. We can't apply for it. They won't even look at it.
Even after the fact, so designating it as for the reason why they were given the overtime was because of the COVID emergency that we declared and also the governor declared?
Yeah, but still, we did not designate it as hazard pay in our payroll system at the time, because it was so new to we were so new to COVID, it was just overtime. So it's not designated in our payroll system as hazard pay, as it's required to be, so.
Okay, so I'm looking for a motion for approval to designate Casey as the agent to execute on behalf of the township.
I'll make it.
You made the motion. Do you have a second?
Second.
Thanks, Ashley. Is there any other board questions or comments? Are there any public questions or comments on this designation of agent? Hearing none, take a vote. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Okay, Casey, you have it. Okay, agenda item number 7, approval of the bills to be paid to the general fund, the sewer revenue fund, the waste and recycling fund, and the capital reserve fund. Do I have a motion to approve these bills tonight?
I make the motion that we approve payment of the bills.
Thank
And
you,
I will
Judy.
second that.
Thank you, Robin. Casey, I have just one question.
Yeah.
It's to do with the timing of the debt service
Yes.
on sewer bond. Trying to find it now.
Sure.
I don't know, I'm struggling to find it before they had it. Is it in this month or was it last month that we approved that? You know? Here, it's on the prepaid fund 08 sheet.
Which,
It's a transfer bond payment to full financial. Sheet 3 of 5 on the prepaid.
okay.
It shows the transfer for the
Yeah,
bond payment.
963, 137.
Yeah, it says due 5/1. I mean, is that the wrong, is it 7/1 is due, or?
I don't know, let me check that. It's called for in the indenture.
I just wonder if that's a typo, and it should really
It could be,
because if we're moving the money now, we're late with it.
yeah, it should have been paid. If that's the date, we should have paid it in April, actually, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, let me check on that with Christine tomorrow morning.
Just email the board.
Absolutely, we'll do it.
I don't have any other questions. So are there any questions from the board on the bills? Are there any public comments or questions on the bills to be paid? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? You go, please. 5-0. And our last agenda item is any items to be raised, not on the agenda by the public, opportunity for the public to raise any issues tonight that we haven't heard about, or board members to raise anything they'd like for the board members to be aware of. Hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion.
I have one to address the board on an issue.
Okay, please come. You can address it from there if you'd like, sir.
No, stand.
Yeah, just for that.
Could you please tell us your name, sir, and where you live?
Yes, my name is Roger Crump. I live at 516 Cork Circle, Village of Shannon. Last month, this was brought to this board's attention about a proposed handicap parking space on Cork Circle. For serving my memory, the board instructed that a survey be sent out, which I received in return. I was dismayed when I saw the agenda that the matter was not going to be discussed, and I want to know why the board did not place the issue on the agenda.
Okay, thank you for your question. So the board is currently looking into that request. We asked for the survey, we've not seen the survey results yet, and we're also looking into some matters as to how the request came about. We just need some more information. So we've tabled it for the time being. It may or may not come back before the board. We'll certainly let you know if it does.
Well, just want to emphasize, I live right across the street where the proposed location. My wife Pamela Crump and I are both disabled, and we have disabled handicap placards. And my next door neighbor, a serving Afghanistan veteran, also has a handicap placard. So we have a lot of cars, and occasionally there is a need for a handicap spot in that area. Not all the time, but occasionally. And I feel like the board did something ingenuous where you said last month, okay, surveys, and I know all my neighbors have filled their surveys out, and then you see it not on the agenda. I just feel like you're just whitewashing it and backtracking it.
Well, like I said, we haven't seen the survey results, so we have not heard from the property owner where the handicap spot was proposed, and the board has not made a decision on this at this time.
Will it be on next month's meeting?
Well, we don't know what the agenda is going to look like for next month. If not,
And when will I know the results of the survey?
when the board knows it, when we see the results of the survey.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for coming.
Are there any other agenda items under public comment? Any other comments from the public?
I will now make a motion to adjourn.
Viewers make a motion to adjourn to a second.
Yes, second.
Thank you, Ashley. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of adjournment? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Saturday.